Hello and welcome to the 13th episode of the Practical PM, your friend, philosopher and guide to product management. Starting this episode, we will focus on product managers' relationships with different functional areas in the organization, including tech, design, analytics, operations and business. There are two aspects to this discussion. First is the skill of product managers in these areas, and the second is the working relationship of product managers with these different functional teams. Let's start with the first one. One of the most common questions aspiring or even practicing product managers often ask me is whether they need a particular XYZ skill to succeed as product managers. What they're really asking is to what extent the product managers need to be engineers, designers, analysts, or business and ops ninjas themselves. The other form this question takes is, if they are good at one of these skills, will it help them become a better product manager? The answer, as frustrating as it may sound, is that it depends on the role, on the team, on the organization, as well as your own aptitude and preference. Suppose the product in question is Instagram. Now this is a product which is highly driven by the UX. It is almost its core USP. So the product managers there would be expected to have a very solid understanding of the UX. But even in Instagram team, if you are product managing a team whose responsibility is to serve photos and videos fastest, then you need to be very solid technically to succeed there as a product manager. In case of a B2B product, where there is heavy reliance on sales to bring revenues, the product manager must have a very good understanding of the sales process and what makes it succeed. That's how they will be able to figure out what will make their product succeed. Many organizations have started accepting, even expecting specializations from the PMs. So they have tech PMs, business PMs, UX PMs and so on. But if you want to be a versatile PM, which I personally have a preference for, then ideally your knowledge should be broad. You should understand tech, design, analytics, business and operations, all or most of these in enough depth to be able to frame the problems correctly and to be able to evaluate the trade-offs to come up with the right solution. So what does it look like in real life? Let me take a made-up example of a very simple feature that you may want to launch in your product. Suppose you want to survey the users who are leaving a certain screen on your product within 10 seconds of reaching it. You expect the survey questions to evolve over time as you gather more information. So having a flexible form builder will be useful. Now your tech lead will tell you that creating a generic form builder is no mean exercise. It can take months. First, there can be many different kinds of fields in any form. Each kinds of fields may require many different kinds of validation, and each field and validation combo can give errors for which you need to ensure that you give suitable and actionable error message to the user submitting the form. Not to mention, you will need extensive UX inputs both on form builder side of things as well as the form viewing and submission side of things. Now, if you understand technology, you would know that they are right about this. But at the same time, you would also know that there are alternatives. You could decide that let's go ahead with just a hard-coded form instead of creating a generic form builder for the first release so that the feature can at least be tested. Or you may research and find out that there are many off-the-shelf form builders available in the market which can be integrated with your product with minimal tech effort. If functionality wise you figured out that you want to go with the second option of integrating a form builder solution available, then your UX person may come back and tell you that the forms that are generated by this form builder, their design does not gel well with the rest of your product. They may also point out that the interactions that this form builder supports in the form are not ideal for your user group. Again, this will be the right UX input, but it is up to you to decide whether the buck stops there. What is it that you are trying to achieve with this feature? If at this stage you are not even sure that enough people will try to fill the survey, then you may decide that despite the design and experience deficiencies, you would go ahead with the integration of this form builder just to test this hypothesis out that people are willing to fill the survey. And once that is established, then in the next iteration, integrating with a better and more expensive form builder, or even investing resources in building that feature in-house may be more justified. So suppose after this you decided to go ahead with the form builder integration anyway. Then once the integration is done, your QA person comes and tells you that there are certain devices on which this form is not working correctly. This is where you will need to ask the right analytics question. What percentage of users who go to the screen for which this survey is meant are on those kind of devices where the forms are not working? If the number is negligible, you can pretty much ignore it. If the number is significant but not majority, you may still decide to go ahead with the integration, but just not show the forms on those devices for now. Then to be able to get this number when you needed it, it would have been important for you to decide at the time the screen was being built what all data you need to capture for later analytics. At the very least, the screen view event and the amount of time spent on that screen, as well as the devices people are using to access that screen. So you see how enough understanding of tech analytics in design helps you take the right product decisions. Now let us take another example to understand how business and ops understanding also helps you with product management. Suppose you are in an e-commerce firm that has just started growing, and the process of creating new products on this platform is extremely slow, and this is just no longer sustainable. You are supposed to solve this problem. Then you are told that the product data comes from the sellers in the form of product catalogs, and there is an internal seller support and operations team that then uploads these products to the platform. So they are the people you should be talking to. When you go and talk to those people, they may show you an Excel sheet with a lot of data which they say they need to convert to the actual product listings on the platform. And they may tell you that to be able to do that, they need to do a lot of manual processing from then on. They need to copy paste certain pieces of data and upload it at one place. They may need to copy paste a certain other pieces of data and need to upload it in another place, and so on. And they would tell you that this is what needs to be automated. But if you gain a good understanding of the entire process, you may realize that the biggest time sink is not what happens after that Excel sheet has come into existence. Biggest time sink is cleaning up the data that they receive from the sellers to be able to create that Excel sheet. So you could automate everything after that, but it will save only so much of time. Instead, what you should be building first is a seller-facing product, a self-serve platform where they can upload their catalogs, and if the format is not right, they should get feedback in the form of error messages telling them exactly what is wrong so that they can fix it and upload again, thus saving all the time that goes into cleaning that data. There can be many reasons why the seller support and operations team did not ask you to do that in the first place. They may be thinking of automation of their tasks, and it may not have occurred to them that a solution for the sellers can be created. Or they may be thinking of seller interaction as their job and everything after that as merely a nuisance that should be automated. If you had decided what to do only by talking to them, you may have decided that your problem statement was to automate the tasks they are asking you to automate. But your actual problem statement was to reduce the time it takes to create new products on the platform without increasing the number of people in the team, and also keeping the process error-free. And you would know the right solution to this only if you understand the entire process end-to-end and understand what is it that the business ultimately needs from this process. So now we understand how understanding of different functional areas in some depth helps us be better product managers. Here is a word of caution though. While you want to understand all these functional areas, you do not want to start thinking like an expert exclusively in one of those areas. If you start thinking only like an engineer or only like a designer, that will defeat the purpose of you being a product manager. If you are paralyzed in your decision making when data cannot provide the answer, then you will never bring a step change in the direction of your product. You can have as much expertise as you want in these functional areas, but it is the skill of using this broad expertise to answer the relevant question and to solve the relevant problems that matters most to you as a product manager. In the next episode, I will get into some of the basic concepts of tech and design that product managers would benefit from having a basic understanding of. For the rest of this episode, let's turn our attention to the second aspect of this discussion, which is the working relationship of product managers with different functional teams. Most of the time, in any new organization or role, you will have to discover these relationships because there aren't any universal set in stone rules for these. Here are some of the things to look out for. Are the analysts part of the product team, or are they part of a separate data or analysis team? Do you have analysts dedicated to your team, or does the analysis task need to be assigned to different analysts based on availability and expertise? If the analysts are part of your product team, or at least if they are dedicated to your team, then it is easier to take their help in exploratory data analysis to identify problem areas. But if that is not the case, then you need to go to the analysts with very well defined questions, and you have to do more of the exploratory analysis yourself. Next, are there project management processes defined in the organization that every team follows, or do you and your team get to define it for yourself? What is the role of product management in project management? Are there separate project managers, or does the tech lead take care of engineering development process, or is the product manager supposed to play that role? Then does design have its own processes that you need to plan for? Getting answer to these questions will help you figure out the working rhythm with all these teams. A product manager's relationship with business teams depend largely on the nature of the business itself. Is it a digital product which brings the revenue by itself? In such cases, product managers may be responsible for the revenue and profit from the product, and they can be the primary decision makers. But if the product is supporting infra for the business, as would be the case in an e-commerce platform selling physical products, then the product managers need to work very closely with their business counterparts to figure out the right North Star matrix for their teams. In such circumstances, in certain companies, it happens that the product management starts getting treated more as project and delivery management function. This is not the ideal situation to be a product manager in, and this is not how product management can even add the best value to any organization. But it does happen, and if you are in such a situation, you can try to shine as a product manager by collaborating with the business, but also using your product management skills to frame the problems better and showing the value to the business. Now, it is a tough ask, but it is possible, and you should look out for those opportunities. Product management and design teams relationship is a significant one. One of the places where it can go wrong is when the organizations define a product by screen designs. This happens when either the product managers or the stakeholders do not understand the importance of, or do not have the patience for, documentation of product requirements. In such cases, design often ends up doing the extra work of defining and refining requirements, and even after that, with just a set of screens, the engineers may not get a very good sense of requirements, and they may also end up redoing things unnecessarily. While working with design and also with engineering and other stakeholders, one thing that product managers must bring to the table are product requirements, as clearly spelled out as possible, and any uncertainties and questions also clearly marked out. If the requirements themselves need design inputs, it is perfectly fine to involve your designer early on in the requirement writing process. You may in fact also need to involve tech lead and engineers if there are technical pieces where there are concerns about feasibility or too much work. All of this is fine, but design should not be used as a replacement for requirement. The product manager should be able to help design use their expertise to solve the right problem. Product management is one of the most broadly defined and the most ill-defined jobs in the industry. So it is likely that the things we discussed in today's episode elicits more questions than the ones it answers. And if you have such questions to discuss, please join our Telegram group and feel free to ask your questions there. I will conclude the episode here. In the next episode, we will talk about some of the basic things in tech that the product manager should understand. So do tune into the next episode. Thank you so much for watching.